Witamy bardzo serdecznie na wykładzie w ramach projektu John Paul II Mission for Marriage. Wykład poprowadzą dr Mavis i Pirola.
Mavis i Ron mieszkają w Sydney w Australii, są małżeństwem od ponad 60 lat i przez te 60 lat byli świadkami publikacji bardzo wielu dokumentów papieskich dotyczących rodziny. Opowiedzą nam, dlaczego dla misji małżeństwa męskość i kobiecość są tak ważne. Serdecznie zapraszamy.
Greetings. It's wonderful to be with you. It's a great privilege to join from the other side of the world. Some of you are from Italy, the land of my father, and the country which we have come to know and which we hold deeply in our hearts.
And many of you are from Poland, where we are blessed to have friends and colleagues who are an inspiration to us. And it's a great joy to be here to reflect with you on one's vocational journey in the light of the life and teaching of our great Pope, St. John Paul II.
Our journey as a couple began when we were university students and we met at a party. We felt an instant attraction to each other and started going out together. The more we saw of each other, the more we wanted to be together. We became madly, romantically in love, and eventually one beautiful spring morning in the presence of family and friends, we committed ourselves to each other in marriage. It was wonderful. And I often say that the most important thing that I got out of university was that I met Mavis. It was certainly what excited me most. We had no idea what life might throw at us in the future. All we knew was that we wanted to face it together and forever.
And then, like all couples, there was a huge change of lifestyle, from constantly thinking of what I needed to do, what we needed to do. And the arrival of each of our 4 children was a wonderful blessing and an adventure. But the complexities of family life had many challenges as well as rewards. We worked our way through the inevitable ups and downs of married life, but many times Ron and I have not only hurt each other, but have gone through spells of being increasingly critical and cut off from each other. We don't throw plates. We are Cold War experts. We remember once our son as a teenager joining us in the kitchen and holding up his finger and saying, it's chilly in here. We laughed our way through that one. But we remember nights when we lay awake, worrying about the distance between us, or about one or other of our children who might seem to be rejecting our values. We'd ask ourselves, where have we gone wrong? There were times when each of us felt very burdened and alone, even wondering if this could be the beginning of the end.
And yet, by the grace of God, here we are, after 61 years, still together, with 8 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, still very much in love and still learning. Indeed, it's a great mystery, un mistero grande. Our on-the-job learning came largely from others around us. The lives of relatable, faith-filled couples inspired us to desire what they had. It taught us that it was they who taught us that our sacraments of marriage was not just for ourselves, but for others. Dedicated singles, working on their relationships, and the witness of celibate priests and religious also gave us valuable insights into marriage. By their witness, all these people made the infinite love of God seem more real and relevant to our love as a couple. But one particular person who influenced us was Pope John Paul II. His missionary zeal for marriage and family was legendary. One of his first actions as Pope was to call for a synod on the family. The title planned was Pastoral Care of the Christian Family. He said, no, that's just looking at the family as something in need, not care of the family. I want to promote the family as an agent of change. So the title was changed to the role of the Christian family in the modern world. He was emphasizing what the family has to offer. Then came Familiaris Consortio, a blueprint for marriage and family life with a strong missionary emphasis. In fact, he used the word mission 64 times to describe married couples and parents. And very early in his pontificate, he created the Pontifical Council for the Family. The council comprised 20 couples from around the world, and that in itself was a prophetic statement. A public reminder that we are not only individuals who happen to be married, we are the basic human community on which the family is founded. And we were privileged to be one of the couples on that council.
We already knew that Pope John Paul II was a dynamic speaker, a prolific traveller, and he spoke with a fearless prophetic voice. But nothing quite prepared us for the personal intensity and enthusiasm that he exuded. He seemed unstoppable and untiring. We experienced this at the Synod on the Laity in the Vatican in 1987. There were 4 weeks of long daily sessions with short morning and afternoon coffee breaks. While we were trying to revive over coffee in each break, the Pope would meet with some international delegation before the next Synod session, and he never missed a session. Then over lunch and dinner each day, he would meet with a different group of 10 participants from the Synod, so that he met all of us during that month. Over our meal with him, he was attentive to each of us, keen to know of our experiences in our country.
His gift of focusing on each person he met was remarkable. We remember an Australian youth who exchanged the sign of peace with the Pope at the World Youth Day Mass in Czestochowa. He was struck by the fact that the Pope seemed completely focused on him alone during that exchange. We were privileged to serve 28 years on the council, and it was a joy and a challenge over that time to learn from his unswerving confidence in marriage and family. Even as he grew older and his health deteriorated and his voice failed, his lived witness on suffering and dying was a powerful witness to us.
And one of the last times we saw him was at a meeting when I was recovering from chemotherapy for breast cancer, and we presumed that he had become aware of it. At the end of the meeting, while people were milling around, he shuffled his way slowly and deliberately to where we were standing. He looked at me for a long moment in silence and then gave me a big hug. I said to Ron afterwards, "I've been hugged by a saint."
One statement of his that particularly speaks to us is, "Family, become what you are." He recognized the tremendous pressures on families, and he had a clear vision of their great calling to mission. And he said that mission is to guard, reveal, and communicate love, sharing in God's love for humanity and the love of Christ for his church. The family, of course, begins with the love between husband and wife. That love is lived out on a daily basis through all the myriads of ways that spouses show their love for each other. We would like to focus on one essential aspect of love, and that is sexuality, specifically the sexual nature of the sacrament of marriage. We had an opportunity to address this at the Extraordinary Synod on the Family in 2014. We said, "The only feature that distinguishes our sacramental relationship from that of any other good Christ-centered relationship is sexual intimacy. Marriage is a sexual sacrament, and it's with its fullest expression in sexual intercourse."
We had actually used the same words when we spoke at the Synod on the Laity. It caused a bit of a stir then. News headlines in Italy said things like, "Fathers, there is sex after marriage." 27 years later, when we said it again, there were once more headlines like Pope Francis given surprise lecture on the joys of sexual intimacy. One woman sent us an email saying she was disgusted that we would talk about sex in front of celibate bishops and at our age. Well, we are no younger, but we are still saying it because it's true. Marriage is not just a sacrament with sex. It is a sexual sacrament. The attraction that first drew us together and has continued as a bonding force between us is basically sexual. And sexual intercourse, through which the marriage is realized and accomplished, is sacrament, because it shares in the gift of Christ makes of his body to the church. Sex is holy, and our path to sanctity is intrinsically linked to our sexual relationship. It has a healing and reconciling dimension. It is the great tenderizer. Sometimes a physical embrace speaks much more than words. It is a wonderful gift from God, and it is good, a necessary force in our lives and central to our marital spirituality.
The truth of this is grounded in scripture and church tradition and has been particularly developed by John Paul II's theology of the body. Starting with Genesis, he points out that we are created for relationship, created by a Trinitarian God of love for love. We all know this to be true. We want to love and be loved and to have deep friendships. And since love by its nature is expansive and self-giving, this human urge to love is generative, most commonly in giving life to and nurturing children of one's own. This is not always possible in marriage. However, our generativity can be expressed in many other profound ways, such as through adoption or works of service, writing, in art, or in ideas. Regardless of who we are, married, single, or celibate, each and every one of us has a vocational desire for intimacy and generativity. Having established that the human person is made for love, John Paul II turns to how do we communicate our love? His starting point for this is summed up in the simple statement, the body expresses the person. Even now, as I'm speaking, I'm using body language to express myself by tone of voice, facial expressions, and physical gestures. We use the body to express our relationship with others. Also, as embodied people, we come in two complementary forms of the same humanity, male and female, equal in dignity to each other, but so different. Every cell in my body is male and every cell in Mavis's body is female. And as he says again, our sexuality is in a sense a constituent of the person, not just an attribute of the person. In other words, whatever words we might use to describe a person, they are always either male or female. Now, as a Christian, I'm meant to love all people, but I won't hug strangers on a bus because I have no relationship with them. Although I often hug a family member or a close friend to express that relationship. So we communicate through our body, and sexual union is the most complete form of body language. Of course, like all communication, it can be misused. But in marriage, it expresses the mutual love of this man and this woman through the total gift and acceptance of each other, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. It is in this form of reciprocal giving and receiving, becoming two in one flesh, that our love reflects the love of Christ for his body, the church. As the Pope writes, the theology of the body becomes in a way also the theology of sex, or rather the theology of masculinity and femininity.
And in talking about the sacrament of marriage, he teaches the body and it alone is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine. You could even say that the abandonment and pleasure reached in sexual fulfillment is a fleeting glimpse of what we are meant to experience endlessly in the glory of God. It is a source of great joy and an experience of gender diversity like no other. Of course, there is much more to marriage than sex, but in the unity of that moment, as in our whole life of loving each other, we lose nothing of our individuality. In fact, we are more fulfilled in our personhood in all its masculinity or femininity. The profound intimacy of sexual union also makes us more sexually aware of each other, in much the same way at times of prayer can make our whole life more prayerful.
The sexual nature of the sacrament of marriage is of paramount importance. Yet we as a church seem to be struggling to find the words and ways to proclaim the holiness of sexuality. In today's world, this is a matter of high relevance. Secularization has obscured the value of a lifelong union and the beauty of the vocation of marriage. Certainly in Australia, sex is trivialized and reduced to a recreational activity. We use it to sell cars. We talk about making a political speech sexy. TV and films can be explicitly sexual, and the viewing of pornography is widespread. And gender ideology and the sexualization of very young children are widely promoted. So why do we as a church find it hard to counter this? One problem is attitude. Prevailing attitudes give the impression that one's sex life is distinct from one's spiritual life. That one comes to one's spirituality despite one's sexuality, not through it. We worry about sex outside marriage, but not about sex inside marriage. At the two synods on the family, there was much talk about marriage preparation, but hardly anything about the significance of sexual intimacy, which is specific to the marital relationship. So there's a huge contradiction between attitudes and teaching.
And this is a laity problem as much as a clerical one. Once in writing a report with couples at the Council for the Family, we suggested a statement like the one we made at the Synod. One couple, very faith-filled, articulate lay leaders, insisted that, no, you can't put that in. You can't talk about sex when you're discussing spirituality. A form of Gnosticism may be an underlying factor, a tendency to focus excessively on the spiritual life, where ours is an incarnational spirituality lived out in flesh and blood terms. Also, the wonderful tradition of monastic spirituality still dominates the approach to lay spirituality. And sex is intensely personal and is not something that is talked about lightly.
And there's also a fear of comparisons. We all tend to compare ourselves with others and worry that we don't measure up. We think we should exercise more, eat better, pray more. And if we look at what the media presents about sex, one would be convinced that one's sex life doesn't compare well. That's unfortunate because we can never compare one couple's love with another's. Each of us is a unique person in the history of humanity. Even our fingerprints are absolutely unique. So each couple expresses their love for each other in a totally unique way. We're not trying to be sexual athletes aiming for a personal best. There are simply no comparisons.
Of particular relevance to this conference is that sex opens us to the transcendent, to the grand mystery of the constant presence of God in our lives. We once surveyed a couple of 100 Catholic couples. We asked them a simple question. When in your married life have you been most conscious of the presence of God? Interestingly, the most common occasion when they were aware of God in their marriage was when making love. And the second commonest was the birth of a child. In other words, this underlined the unitive and procreative aspects of sex. And that touches on Humanae Vitae, a teaching that has been upheld by Pope John Paul II and restated by his successors. Yet the gap between church teaching at the highest level and marital practice is enormous and well recognized. We remember our own confusion and anger when Humanae Vitae was published. However, we talked and prayed about it and made the decision to follow its teaching and to continue to practice periodic continence. but we'd have to admit at that stage more out of obedience than conviction. But gradually we came to appreciate that love could actually grow through the other-centeredness inherent in periodic abstinence. Yes, it was certainly difficult at times, but working on it together made us more sensitive to each other and helped us to recognize the preciousness of God's gift of sexuality. Incredibly, it can also give us the extraordinary privilege of being co-creators in new life, a life meant to live forever in God's love.
It involved us in cooperating in an area of utmost intimacy and sensitivity. I had to be more attentive and interested in Mavis's fertility, thus appreciating her womanhood in a deeper way. And I felt trusted by being invited into an area of her life from which I would tend to feel excluded. Mavis, on the other hand, had the satisfaction of knowing that she was loved for who she is, without having to change or deny her fertility. In other words, the teaching of Humanae Vitae connected us more deeply with the essence of our masculinity and femininity. And in waiting, there was an enhancement of yearning for intimacy, which encouraged us to search for ever more ways of expressing our love for each other. The little love notes, the phone calls during the day, the physical gestures, the caresses, the kisses, the hugs.
A teaching is heard when it resonates with the lived experience in people's lives. And Humanae Vitae calls us to do what is almost unthinkable in today's society, to abstain at times from sexual relations. Consequently, many have regarded it as quite irrelevant. And furthermore, it has often been seen as a litmus test of Catholic orthodoxy, without regard to the enormous pressures and difficulties faced by many couples regarding their fertility. The end result is a resounding silence on a matter of utmost relevance to all married couples. We believe that a greater appreciation of the spirituality of sexuality is a path to truths offered in this teaching. It is an area in which the law of gradualness could be applied with love and sensitivity. Humanae Vitae invites us to learn and explore a beautiful way of life and a holistic approach to marital love.
Well, the Church exists to evangelize. And in Familiaris Consortio, John Paul II strongly emphasized the giftedness of marriage and family life, especially their evangelizing capacity. And he refers to Christian married couples and parents as witnesses of Christ to the ends of the earth. A favorite statement of his was, I repeat with conviction, no plan for organized pastoral work at any level must ever fail to take into consideration the pastoral care of the family, the goal of which consists above all in stimulating couples and families to play their own and irreplaceable part in church and society. In highlighting the unique and irreplaceable role of couples and families, he was proclaiming the missionary role of the sacrament of matrimony.
So we are equipped for mission. Where do we start? We start with ourselves. In the first place, there is the mission to give our spouse the best experience we can of God's unconditional love. And just as priests and religious devote time to their own spiritual lives, if they are to be effective, we have to devote time to our sacrament. That means repeated decisions to work on our relationship, to pray together, make time for each other, and seek ongoing formation through reading or doing courses or retreats that promote our sacramental lifestyle. Our mission continues in the family, the domestic church. For better or worse, we are the prime educators of our children. Their core attitudes in life, such as their sense of personal dignity, their care for others, Their ability to forgive and to handle suffering and their understanding of their sexuality primarily comes through their experiences in the family. Most importantly, it is where the Christian values and faith have the best chance of being passed on. The family is the major training ground for the integration of life and faith.
And this process of formation in the family can continue in countless ways throughout life. Just one little example. When our grandchildren were younger, we told them a wonderful secret, that Mavis is my princess and I'm her Prince Charming. They used to roll their eyes and joke about it and demand to see our castle and my white horse. But they loved it. Even children yearn for a love without end. Grandparents, by their example, witness to the value of a lifelong committed relationship. Our mission to evangelize spills over to our extended family, to neighbours, and to society in general. In parishes, the opportunities are endless. Examples that immediately come to mind there are sacramental preparation programs, mentoring couples in marriage preparation, supporting couples in the first few years of their marriage, and providing marriage enrichment.
And these can be especially effective when they are held in the home to provide a welcoming and hospitable atmosphere.
Involvement with youth is a special opportunity for couples to evangelize. In Australia, the Antioch Youth Movement always involves a married couple who usually have teenagers of their own. They provide the anchor for the parish youth group. Their presence and witness as a relatable Christian couple in the midst of the youth is a wonderful gift. Whatever the area of evangelization, the medium is the message. The witness and interaction of the couple together can have far more impact than words alone.
In particular, there is an urgent need for couples to come together in small groups to explore and develop the mystery of human love, and particularly the spirituality of their sexuality. In an open and non-judgmental atmosphere, and working with their pastors, they need to find new ways and relatable language to express the sacred meaning of sexuality in marriage. It is very much part of the mission that we are called to. Such a venture would be a meaningful response to Pope Benedict XVI's call for a change in mentality towards the laity, so that they are seen as co-responsible with our pastors, not just collaborators in the mission and life of the church. Of course, there are blocks that tend to hold us back. One is recognizing our faults. Each one of us carries some element of brokenness in our relationship. There is no such thing as a perfect couple or a perfect family. All of us let each other down at times in big or little ways. Another block is thinking that we have nothing special to offer. After all, the marriage and family seem so ordinary. They are only ordinary in the sense of being common. When it comes to commitment, courage, caring, and sharing the love of God, they are extraordinary. Family is the extraordinary in the ordinary. Couples and their families are full of examples of great love and self-sacrifice, and families like this are all around us. And as St. John Paul II teaches, the family is not simply the object of the church's pastoral care. It is also one of the church's most effective agents of evangelization. And we as a church have a wonderful message about love and sexuality. As couples, we are uniquely placed to respond in particular to the search for meaning that surrounds sex in modern society.
A beautiful thing about the sacrament of matrimony is that a lifetime of decisions to love one's spouse helps us to see the other person's inner beauty and goodness ever more clearly, and that we continue to see it through the lens of our masculinity and femininity. An example, an elderly friend of ours has a husband in a nursing home. She not only visits him daily, attentive to his needs, but she compliments him on his appearance, plays his favorite music, holds his hand, and chats to him about their shared memories. Their quiet joy is a lesson in life for the staff. Again, a priest friend of ours brought the Eucharist to the home of a very elderly lady parishioner. The husband met him at the door and took the priest to the bedroom. As the priest looked at the frail, wrinkled woman in the bed, he heard the husband say, "Isn't she beautiful?" Pope Francis, in his encyclical Amoris Laetitia, captures these examples when he says, "In the course of every marriage, physical appearances change. But this hardly means that love and attraction need fade. If a couple can come up with a shared and lasting life project, they can love one another and live as one until death do them part, enjoying and enriching intimacy. Even if others can no longer see the beauty of one's identity, a spouse continues to see it with the eyes of love, and so his or her affection does not diminish. He or she reaffirms the decision to belong to the other and expresses that choice in faithful and loving closeness."
Throughout Pope John Paul II's life and teaching, you can sense the urgency he felt for marriage and family, that the future of humanity passes by way of the family. In particular, he has left us with the mission to proclaim the truth and beauty of sexuality and its place in the sacrament of marriage.
So we thank you for allowing us to be with you, and we wish you wonderful adventures ahead.
Thank you.